And that is that you don't realize how important your health is until you don't have it anymore, right?
All diets work, right?
Oh, they all work.
Yeah, they all work. You just have to be consistent with it. But go ahead.
I started to discover that it was a lifestyle decision, not a diet.
For me, is when I turned 50, I said, okay, I'm done with this up and down yo-yo thing. My outcome is not to walk around with 6-pack abs. I got 4 of them, but it's not 6.
And now I'm in mid-40s, and I'm going to tell you right now, I don't feel like I'm mid-40s. I feel like I felt like I was 21 still.
Those files need to be released. And I understand that heads will roll and that reputations will be tarnished. But what about those girls, man? Like, how do you allow somebody's reputation to trump, pun intended, over the little girls that suffered? And to not release those files is criminal. I don't care what you say. There's nothing you can tell me that will ever change my mind to suggest that those files shouldn't be released.
If you don't have a side hustle, go get a hot side hustle. He said, if you're not making $100,000 a month, you're lazy. And I'm like, oh my God.
Welcome to the Family Office, planning for the people who matter most. This is the podcast about preparing for what matters before it becomes urgent. We dive into the realities of aging, the complexities of family dynamics, the ins and outs of financial planning, and the big decisions that will shape your future. Because when the unexpected happens, a strong plan is the difference between protection and regret. In today's episode, we are joined by 2 experts in the field of family-focused financial planning. First, Dr. Len Cooper, founder of Beacon on the Hill, whose advocacy and programs have empowered countless families to navigate the challenges of elder care with confidence. And Chris Philp, a seasoned financial strategist with over 15 years of experience guiding families on how to safeguard their assets, manage care costs, and preserve their legacy. Together, Len and Chris will walk us through practical strategies for supporting aging parents without jeopardizing your own financial future, and explain why so many people wait far too long to start planning.
Perfect. All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Chris Philp, and with me, as always, I have Dr. Len Cooper here from the Family Office Files. This is kind of like a maiden voyage for us here. This is the first episode of the Family Office Files. And what this is intended to be is an unscripted conversation between 2 high net worth individuals, and not a conversation where we're preaching or a conversation where we're trying to teach or we're trying to instruct on anything. This is just simply a conversation of 2 high net worth professional adults who have 2 different backgrounds, who are coming together to have a dialogue, a conversation, a debate. And at the end of it, we're still friends. At the end of it, we still do business together. At the end of it, we're still neighbors. At the end of it, we have no emotional hard feelings for each other. And I'm kind of just get into some backgrounds here real quickly, just so you kind of understand who's who in the zoo a little bit. And this is something probably that we'll probably do as we come into it each time. We'll shorten it. We'll see how the flow goes. But we both have different and both unique backgrounds. I myself am a non-college educated Italian-American background, and I am a successful entrepreneur. I run multiple businesses. I actually got my start in entrepreneurship while I was in high school and became an entrepreneur coming out of high school, worked W-2, only had 2 W-2 jobs ever, and then went into the world of insurance and financial services under the mentorship at first of Dr. Cooper. Broke out of that and formulated a couple other successful businesses out of that, became semi-retired at the age of 43. And that's really kind of my basic story there. Married, 7 kids, been married for 16 years this August, Len. And I know you've known me more. I know you've known me most of my married life, or I think my whole married life, actually. So I'll throw it back over to you now, Len, kind of your quick background here on your story, because it's a little bit different from mine.
Yeah, I never knew you were Italian, Chris. I never knew that. Now, the name Philp, I didn't connect that to Italian. I always thought it was some other European country. So that's very cool.
That's the Scottish background. So dad's Scottish, mom,
got it. Okay.
Sicilian, dad a little bit of Italian in there. So we say just mostly Italian.
Okay, makes sense. Makes sense. Well, it's great to be here on the Family Office, and I'm excited about where we're going to go with this because one of the things that we talked about before was just this idea that, you know, he's more right leaning, I'm more left leaning, and we just have this belief that you don't have to live in these polar opposite silos because some of the beliefs that he has, I don't share and vice versa. But at the same time, there's a lot of overlap that we have. So we're going to have open debates, but before we get into all of that, as he mentioned, my name is Len Cooper, and I came up with this whole idea of going to college to get a good job, and I did that. So I was a school teacher and graduated from college in Riverside, California, from UC Riverside, and became a teacher. Then I was a vice principal, and at the age of 29, I became a school principal. And so I was thinking, you know, life is great. And I got another promotion and became a district level person. And as a district level administrator, one of the things that I saw was just the ugliness of politics. And so what happened for me is that I understand that anytime you have human beings involved, there's always going to be politics. But at the same time, the issue is that politics don't have to be ugly. Politics don't have to be nasty. And so because of the political scene and environment, I decided to leave and join the entrepreneur space. And that's where Chris and I met. And so started a successful business, opened up a lot of offices in the insurance and financial services space. But then I retired at 49 and I traveled the world, spent some time with my wife and reconnected with my kids because being an entrepreneur was 7 days a week, every single day. And I don't regret any of it because it gave me a pathway to live a life of freedom and to have a nice net worth and to be able to take care of my family and things like that. But I started to get bored, and the life of an entrepreneur is your brain never stops. It's always going. It's always thinking about new things. And so one thing that I recognized is that there were members of my family that had some challenges in the area of their home care. And so my grandmother ended up having dementia, and I'll tell that story another time. But long story short, I ended up in home care because of family reasons. And now here we are reconnecting because if you go, you'll see a couple of other videos that Chris and I did together that really went over well. And our whole intention was to teach about finances and then also how does that, carry over to the home care space. And so we decided, you know what? We have good rhythm. We have a good synergy. And so why don't we go ahead and start a podcast? And here we are on the first, I guess, official episode of the podcast. So man, it's great to be here with you, Chris.
Absolutely. It really is. And I think that just to watch or to see the evolution of our relationship, and also just the evolution of where we're going and the direction we're going and getting ideas and thinking creatively and just having the opportunity to be able to have a platform and to be able to do this and have that story and to be able to have that conversation so that other people can have that, can hear from us and see it. That to me, I think is probably the most exciting aspect of it. But I gotta say, I'm looking at both of us on here and I'm just like, dang, bro, you look freaking good because you're like, what, 55 now, 54? I'm going.
No, I'm 53, so don't age me too much, man. But I appreciate that.
I can't even believe it. I can't even believe it. I'm going, dang, I got to start doing something here because I'm only 44. I'm going to be 44 at the end of this month, and I'm going, dang, Len's got almost 7 years on me. I better start doing something different here because.
Hey, man, they say black don't crack, man. So, but you know, I think part of what we talked about before, on this show, we're going to be talking about health and we're going to be talking about biohacking. We're going to be talking about longevity and really being able to put yourself in a position because at the end of the day, there's an old cliche that says your health is your wealth, right? So For me, the whole idea is that if you eat well and you exercise and you put good stuff into your body and you move your body, you're going to live longer and you're going to be healthier. And so for those of you I'll be coming from the home care health space and Chris will be coming more from the financial space. And then our interaction will be a lot from the taking care of yourself and just the merging of those two. So my perspective is this. My hope is that your parents won't need our services for a long time because you're getting enough information to be able to take care of yourself from a health perspective. And so, for me, one of the things that I realized is when I turned 50 years old, man, I was 20 pounds overweight. And I started to have a gut and I started to have low levels of energy. And I wasn't happy about turning 50. A lot of people look at that as a milestone. It wasn't a milestone for me. And so that's when I really started to say, you know what? Right now, you've got to change your lifestyle. You need to change your habits. You need to change the way that you feed your temple because you probably have fewer years in front of you than you have behind you. So do something about it. And so I'm looking forward to jumping into that as well, because I've learned a lot about just health and eating and all that stuff. So I'm looking forward to that too.
Yeah, I mean, and just sharing those topics and those tidbits and just different things. It's kind of almost like just a transparency into our lives and how we did that and how. Again, not telling anybody what to do or any of that. I think there's just the internet is rife with that. It's full of that. But just like, hey, here's who I am. Here's who he is. Here's who we are. And here's what we did. And here's what worked for us. Because it's kind of almost like, hey, just show me how you did this, right? Like, because you can hear all that. Oh, this is, this is how you're successful. And this is how we made it. And this is how we drive this kind of car and live in this neighborhood and all this stuff. Great. Could you just tell me what you actually did? Yes, this is exactly what we did. So, today we have 6 topics that we're going to try to talk about. And in no certain order, we're going to talk about aging parents and the sandwich generation, what that means. We're going to talk about health today, your body versus, your summer body, and then lifestyle changes. We're going to talk about financial resets, right? And the second half of this year, what that looks like for you, what you ought to be doing. If you're like anything like me and like Len, you're like, okay, first half of the year's over. What have you accomplished financially? What are you planning on wanting to accomplish? What can you do? What's your reset look like going in out of summer? Summer and family and what that relates to and how that looks. Zohan Mamdani, am I saying that wrong?
Mamdani,
winning a Democratic primary, first openly Democratic socialist. I think he's from Uganda, studied African studies. We're going to talk about that and what that means. And then lastly, the Epstein files and why is this such a big deal. And there's a lot of that stuff going on over the weekend. I think, we'll talk into that. But I think since we're talking about biohacking and health and what that looked like, I think it's a good segue. We could just kind of go into that right now. And kind of maybe we'll just talk about health and summer body versus, lifestyle changes. And really what that looks like, simply because you said your health is your wealth. And we like to talk about a lot of different things, Len. And
driven by vanity, so I would have, so in life, you have the thermostat and you have the thermos, right? And for me, my setting is 200 pounds. So at the point before I turned 50,
200 pounds, that's your.
So that's my okay. If I hit 200 pounds, that means that I need to bring it back, dial it back, go on a diet and get healthier so I can look better. So what would happen is I was on this constant yo-yo. So I would get up to 200 pounds. I'd go back down to about 190, 187. And then I'd say, you know what? Everything's great, and go back to my old eating habits. And then I'd creep up, and what I would do is on the way down, I was always looking at my weight, always seeing how much I weighed. But what I didn't do is on the way back up, I never looked at it, because in my mind, right after I started, I would eat a meal and then take a look at the scale and then say, oh, it hasn't moved that much. And then after that, I stopped looking at the scale. And then, all of a sudden a month goes by, 2 months goes by, but I'm looking at myself every day. So I don't see day by day changes. But then by typically around month 5 or 6, I'm back up to my weight. And then I go back on the diet again. And one time I would try one diet method, and another time I try another one. But what happened for me is the real changes when I turned 50. And so, I'll tell you about that whole story. But what was it like for you? Was it like a back and forth type of thing? Or was it when you had your awakening back, when you were 36? Was it like, have you been pretty consistent ever since then? What's been your journey?
Well, I mean, it's interesting. The thing and that's the reason why a lot of diets don't fail, right? And that's kind of really what I want to talk about, summer body.
Yeah, all diets work, right?
Oh, they all work.
Yeah, they all work. You just have to be consistent with it, but go ahead.
Yeah, and I think that's the dichotomy. That's the thing here, is talking about the summer body mindset versus the lifestyle change. And it's interesting you say vanity, because for me, it originally was for vanity. I got out of high school and I was not happy with the way I looked, and I was like, I want to date girls, and I want to date beautiful girls. I want to date beautiful women, and I want to go crazy, and I'm 21 and I can drink now, and all of these great things. So for me, it was vanity. So I started doing cardio kickboxing, and for me, what worked was I found a little thing. I was cleaning out something in my house, and I found this little book that my mom had. It was called the Air Force Diet. And essentially what the Air Force diet was a low-carb diet. And then from there, I was like, well, that's not around anymore because it's not 1960 or 1950 anymore. So I discovered the Atkins diet, and I started doing low-carb diet, and I started exercising, doing cardio kickboxing. But because, most guys are lazy, and I was still lazy, I was looking for the quick fix. I was like, I just started doing low-carb. And for me, that was very easy. And I would do some exercise. I would run. I was a runner. I enjoyed running. But for me, low carb, it was for vanity reasons. And I lost a ton of weight, and I got in really good shape, and I was like, okay, this is great. And I followed that for some time. But of course, as you start to get girlfriends, you start to get lazy again, right? So all those things. Yeah. And that's the difference again between the summer body thing and I'm doing it for a fleeting reason. Vanity is a fleeting reason, right? And that's what I discovered anyways. And I would gain the weight. And then I go through a breakup, and then I get in shape again, and then you get it, find a girl again, and then you gain the weight. And that's really where I started to mature in the process, where I started to discover that it was a lifestyle decision, not a diet. But for me, I still do low carb. Still to this day, I do low carb. For my diet plan of choice, or my protocol now, is what I really like to label as for myself internally, is Mediterranean paleo, and that's what I stick to. But I always trend towards low carb, and that's really what it is, finding what works for your body. For me, that's what works.
Oh, that's cool. I like that because, like you said in the beginning, every diet does work. And I think it's just a matter of finding the one that works for you long term. And so what happened for me is when I turned 50, I said, okay, I'm done with this up and down yo-yo thing. I'm tired of going through the beginning agony of starting that diet, because starting is the hardest, because you have these ideas of grandeur that, you're going to get the 6-pack abs and everything's going to be great. And it's going to be a piece of cake, because truth be told, for guys, losing weight's not that hard, but it's the keeping it off part that's the difficult part. So for me, what happened is once I turned 50, that's when I really introduced walking into my daily routine. And so now on a low day, I'm typically walking about 10,000 steps. My goal is to hit about 20,000 steps a day. And so I know before you say, okay, how in the world did you do that? Do you do that and maintain it consistently? Is for me, when I take my walks, that's when I'm making my phone calls. That's when I'm sending my emails. That's when I'm doing some ideation for different ideas from a home care agency and creating content. And, so I may be taking a look, and I'm calling my mom. I'm reaching out to my dad. I'm talking to people that I care about and maintaining those relationships. So by the time I get up, typically around 4:30, I'm out of the house either by 5 or 5:30. So by doing 20,000 steps, I can be done by 8 o'clock and I can start my day. So it is really it starts the night before for me. So I'm typically in bed somewhere between 9:30 and 10. If I've got extra work to do, of course, I'm going to be up till 10:30 or 11, but that's not a habit. That's not something that I do regularly. That's the exception. So by getting a good night's sleep, because sleep is where your body does the most recovery, your cells are recovering and rejuvenating and things like that. So I don't set my alarm clock. I wake up when my body tells me to wake up. And so once I wake up, I get up, I get my 20,000 steps in, and I get started with my day. Now, as it relates to eating, I don't do paleo. I'm mostly a low carb, mostly like a ketogenic type of a diet. And so I settled on that because I like the idea of being able to eat whole foods. But I'm not going to lie. I love my sweets and I love my breads and all of that stuff. But I understand that I just can't eat it all the time. So what I did is when I turned 50, I introduced walking, and then I introduced keto, and I stayed pure to it until I hit my target weight. And then what I had to do was figure out what can I do as a regimen to keep the weight off. So what I do is I do a low carb keto diet, but on Sundays and Wednesdays, those are my cheat days. So those are the days where I eat my sweets. Those are the days that I eat my bread. And so as long as I'm doing keto 5 out of the 7 days for my body type, I've found that allows me to stay at the weight. Now, my outcome is not to walk around with 6-pack abs. I got 4 of them, but it's not 6. And so, but I just want to look good in my clothes. I don't want to have man boobs, I don't want to have breasts, I just want to feel good when I put my pants on. I don't have a belt, that's got a gut that's covering my buckle, and that works for me. And so I know that based on my eating habits, if I wanted to bulk up, I'd go more heavy on the proteins and get into a weightlifting regimen. I don't like that though. I've gone to the gym and I've done that for a while, but it was something for me where it wasn't something I enjoyed. And because I didn't enjoy it, it wasn't sustainable. So my last thing that I'll say is that do what you enjoy, and also be willing to do what you don't enjoy for periods of time so you can live the life that you want to live.
And I think the biggest thing that I'm hearing when I'm listening to you now is really just finding what works for you, right? Experimenting, tinkering, and finding what works for you. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, it's got to be a very concrete, very solid reason why. I mean, outside of the obvious reasons of, look, if you have self-worth, right, and you respect yourself and you care about how you look and how you feel, you're gonna take care of yourself, right? If you don't, you're not. You're just not. And that's really the thing. For me, it's like how do you stay a high value man, right? How do you stay a high value man? And in 2017, after looking at what I was doing and looking at myself in the mirror, I really just looked at it and I thought about my kids first, and I was just like, I need to be a good example to my kids. Right? I have to be that example to them. I don't want them to look at me and go, and especially at that point, they were starting to get at that point where they're going to be older than 5 and 6. So now all of a sudden kids start to have an opinion and they start to know things and they start to become aware. I'm like, I don't want to be the dad that's like the overweight, out of shape, crotchety dad. I just didn't want to be that for my kids. I just didn't want to. So I got really freaked out in 2017, and that's when I started working out very heavily again and doing those things. But for me, it wasn't until, again, where the why became even more stronger for me. Obviously, my kids.
What was the why? So your kids was one.
Oh, 100%.
Was that your main driver? Because one of the things that you also mentioned was being a high value man. So that's something I want to dig into a little bit too. But yeah.
Because at first I was getting in shape for summertime. I was getting in shape to get a girl, right? I was getting in shape for this. Then it was like, okay, well, I already got married. I got my wife. My wife loves me, right? and obviously we're attracted to each other. We just keep having kids. We can't stop having kids, right? So
7,
that's fine.
bro. Yeah.
That's fine, right? I mean,
Right,
that's fine, right?
That's working.
And I'm not Mormon, right? And that's kind of that goes right. Some people ask me that, but it started to get more about non-superficial stuff, right? And it started to become a lifestyle for me because I was like, I want to be able to run with them. I want to be able to work out with them. I want to be able to do sports activities with them, Len. I don't want to be left on the field. Oh, Dad can't hang out. I don't want to be, oh, that's just what old people do. Dad is out of shape, right? I didn't want to be in that. And then at the same time, I was looking at it from my wife's standpoint and going, my wife doesn't want to see some out of shape guy hop out of the shower. She don't want to see some guy like breathing hard because you can't like get up the stairs or anything like that. You're like, she don't want to look at none of that stuff, right? None of that. So I was like, you better get your butt in shape. So part of that is as you start to read self-development books and you start to read business books and you start to correlate this and you go, and that's kind of what's important to me is like, you can't be high functioning in business or in any area or in any areas of your life. You can't be high functioning. And then all of a sudden your body looks terrible. You're out of shape and health wise. Because how can you be high performance? And I'm like, how can I be of high value to my wife if I look like crap? And I can't get up. And then I also looked at it and went, well, wait a minute. I'm providing value to my family, right? And to everyone else I look at or everyone else around me in my life. How can I go out and work 16 hours a day, 12 hours a day and provide value for myself or my family if I'm not in shape because I can't perform anymore? And that's really where it became a big wake-up call for me. And it started to go from just, a summer body mindset or because I got to do this to more of a what you do in your 20s tells you how you're going to feel in your 30s, what you do in your 30s and your 40s. You know what I mean, Len? And it's like, if I don't start doing this in my mid-30s, late mid-30s, 36, if I don't really start getting serious about this, by the time I get to mid-40s, I'm going to feel it. And now I'm in mid-40s, and I'm going to tell you right now, I don't feel like I'm mid-40s. I feel like I felt like I was 21 still. The way I feel when I was 21 is the way I still feel like today. And that is because I decided to not do it to get the girl, right? But do it because it really was a mindset change. That's where I think that's where you develop the discipline.
That's good. That's really good because you're much of a quick learner than I am. And so for me, it was, I always knew, because we had, mentors that talked to us about being high performing and things like that. So I never allowed myself to get like super out of shape. Like even though 200 pounds was my weight limit, it didn't impact my day-to-day, performance. Except for the fact that looking back, I would definitely say I have more energy now. So I probably just didn't realize it because I was in it and carrying all that extra weight around. But now that I look back, I definitely have more energy now at 53 than I did when I was in my 40s for sure. I would say for me, the reason why for me to really maintain the weight was more of vitality. Like I don't necessarily care because I have a 102-year-old grandmother and she still walks and she still talks and she's in her right mind. She'll say some funny things because she's hilarious, but she has a sharp mind. And I don't necessarily care if I live to 102. What I care about is being able to walk, being able to have a sharp mind, being able to feel good on a regular basis. I'd much rather die younger but I feel good every day as opposed to living longer. And so I figured, you know what? Most people die because of heart attacks, and most people's heart attacks are because of stress and how they put stuff into their bodies. And if they're putting all these red meats into their bodies every day, and they're putting this food that's high in carcinogens, and they're putting all of these oxidating types of food into their body, like refined foods and overly processed foods and high sugar content food all the time, you may not feel it when you eat it one time or two times or five times, but that effect over the course of 20, 30 years makes a big difference. Think about this. I had a colleague when I was
right?
That's it, man. Effect. That's it. That's exactly
Ray
right.
Dalio, I was listening to Ray Dalio a couple days ago, and he's like, once you get to your 40s and your 50s, you'll start to see the compounding effects of your life.
That's right. That's exactly right. And to that point, one of my colleagues, when I was a principal, because remember, I was younger than all of them, and he was in his 50s, and he said, I started putting on about 2 pounds a year at 40, and now I'm 60. That's 40 pounds of extra weight that I just put on gradually. Think about that. 40 pounds.
Like this, you don't even realize it's happening.
It's actually a very slow process, but then you look back and now all of a sudden, 20 years later, you've got 40 extra pounds. That's the insidious effect of it. And so, yeah, it's crazy, but we'll definitely dig more into different specifics of what to do, because you talked about paleo, I talked about keto, we both talked about the fact that all kind of diet works, but I really want to jump in on some other episodes to really get very butt specific about somebody, because somebody might be out there watching and they've been battling weight their entire lives and they're like, I don't know what to do. Every single time I try, it just fails, and what do I do? So I definitely want to give some value in another episode to folks that are dealing with that.
And I think it's just so important, as we transition here, to just always, as a man and as a husband, even if you're not a husband, even if you're just a single guy, it's so important to maintain or to have a fitness program, a nutrition program, and a lifestyle program centered around that as one of the pillars in your life. Just because you can't be your best if that area of your life is not controlled. Because again, men need discipline, and that's an area of life where a lot of men do not have discipline in their exercise or their diet, exercise, nutrition plan, and that is going to bleed into other areas of your life. So yeah, we could definitely talk about what worked, specific details. We could just do a whole episode or a whole talk just on that. But definitely, you could see the difference in your later years. You could see the difference now, post-retirement, post-semi, or anything that you want to talk about. You could notice that difference. So,
no doubt.
Yeah, definitely for sure. And again, the key difference is it not just being something that you're trying out, but it's an actual lifestyle. It's part of your lifestyle. And that's the key thing is, Mediterranean diet is part of my lifestyle. Low carb is part of my lifestyle, as I'm sure you're doing nutrition planning. What you follow, it's part of your lifestyle. It's not just something that you do.
Right. It's not a temporary thing where I hit a target and then I stop and then go back into old habits. All of that had to change. You're absolutely right.
How to make it part of your daily life, and you've incorporated into that. So
absolutely.
I like that.
Absolutely.
So
you want to talk about next?
I should talk about because it's fresh right now with the Epstein stuff going on right now. Now, I mean, I'm a little torn on this. And I'm a little torn just simply because this has been a big thing. It's been a big problem. And I don't want to say it's a big problem, but it's been a big distraction for a lot of people. And I think it's a distraction. I know I sent you an episode of a different podcast to listen to, and he talks specifically about that, why that is in there. I think there's a lot of distractions, but I think it's a problem, and here's why. I think it's becoming a big problem again, and it's surfaced its head, and it's not going away again, because transparency was one of the biggest issues leading into the Trump election, right? Or I don't want to say the Trump election, but this latest election cycle. Mm-hmm. Transparency was the biggest issue with the Biden administration. Trump has brought back a lot of transparency by and far in this, but now all of a sudden we get to the Epstein stuff and it's becoming a point of non-transparency again. And I don't understand why, obvious reasons. And the timing just looks weird for me with Musk and the breakdown with Musk. And if you look at an interview that Trump and Musk did a few months ago, like the early part of the years, the biggest issue they were going to have, and Donald Trump said it himself, was they're going to try to break us up, right? right? Or we want to make sure we stay together, we don't get broken up. And then kind of almost you see like that was the reason why there was a point of contention between Trump and Musk. I just don't understand why we're not transparent about the Epstein files. I just don't understand. Release them, put it all out there. We promise full transparency. I don't understand why. And it only makes you think one reason why we wouldn't be transparent on it, other than two reasons why I don't think it's transparent. Number one, because your name's in it and you don't want your name to be in it in whatever capacity. Or number two, there's so much damaging stuff on so many people that are in so high network or high profile positions that if we did release it, everything would fall apart. I'm curious to know where your position is on that line. Being the left-leaning person on here, I being the right-leaning person, I want to know your perspective on it.
Yeah, so it's interesting because you have different people like the director of the FBI, Kash Patel, talking about release the Epstein files. And then you have Pam Bondi saying, we have the Epstein files right here. And you have these influencers that are on TV talking about, we've got the files, and they're there and they're parading these files around. And Epstein it's a huge issue because there is so much damage that have been done to the girls. Like, people are not talking about the little girls, the underage women that went through all of this hell and this trauma. And so when you have any presidency, I don't care Republican or Democrat, when you're talking about underage children, like even in prison, like that's one of the no-nos. Like if you find out that somebody went to jail and they're a pedophile, like they don't want to bend they don't want to bend over. They don't want to have the soap fall to the ground, if you understand what I'm saying. And so when you look at in a big way, in a big way. Yeah, absolutely. And I say that because, unfortunately, I have people that I know that have been locked up. And the reality is, man, they do not like pedophiles. And I don't care if you're conservative or if you're in prison, people don't like sex offenders. They don't like pedos.
You don't mess with the kids.
Nah, man, that's off limits. That's off limits. And so when you have people like Patel and Bondi, and you even have JD Vance talking about releasing the files, and all of these people are talking about these files are supposed to be released, and all of a sudden the script flips almost overnight. And it feels like something was found in those files that seem particularly damaging. But what's in my mind is that, okay, there were people that had access to these files. Why didn't you read through it before you say that you're going to release them, especially when you had access to them? And when you look at all of the pictures that Trump had with Epstein, it just makes you wonder. And I'm not saying that he was one of the perpetrators because I don't know, so I don't have any right to say that. But it does make you wonder because you see footage of him at parties with him, and you can tell they're having conversations, and Donald Trump is whispering into his ear, and Epstein is smiling, and he's being, Trump is the alpha in the conversation and Epstein is the beta in the conversation, and obviously there's Trump has power. And so when I think about where this whole debacle is leading, you got to be held into account, and you have to let the chips fall where they may. Those files need to be released. And I understand that heads will roll and that reputations will be tarnished. But what about those girls, man? Like, how do you allow somebody's reputation to trump, pun intended, over the little girls that suffered? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me, bro. And so when we talk about wanting to protect the integrity of these people and protect the identity, you weren't thinking about that when you were screwing some girl on the island. You weren't thinking about that. Now, let me present the flip side of the coin, what I'm thinking about. I also want to be sober and not emotional to jump to the conclusion that just because your name is on the file, that doesn't necessarily mean that you were a pedophile. That doesn't necessarily mean that you were engaging in sexual misconduct with little girls, right? But it does allow you to be questioned. It does suggest that you know something. It does suggest that you may have insider information that can help bring the people who are the perpetrators to justice. And to not release those files is criminal. I don't care what you say. There's nothing you can tell me that will ever change my mind to suggest that those files shouldn't be released. Yes, protect the names and of the innocent. For sure, you can redact all of their names, but the perpetrators and the people that were there and any incriminating information, that needs to be released to the public, because we, as a country, I honestly, I didn't vote for Trump, but that doesn't mean that I don't want him as a president to be successful. So I want every president to be successful, whether I voted for you or not, because we live in America, man. And I want this country to succeed. But right now, it's a failed presidency right now because of what's going on right now with those Epstein files, because it's the principle of the thing. And when you say one thing and you don't do it, then you lose trust and you lose credibility with me. And once that's gone, it's very difficult to get it back.
I mean, normally I wouldn't take such a hard, like, I mean, I'm not going to go so far as to say, like, failed presidency. I think that's, and I can see the emotion with you on that one. But what it does affect me a lot on that is that you can't run on a core foundational principle of transparency and then dismiss that as not a fact or not a something to be transparent about. Because then it creates such an incongruency for someone like me, because now I have a hard time supporting everything else. You get what I mean? Because
yes.
Now it's like, wait a minute, hold on. We can't pick and choose what we're going to be transparent about. We're either transparent about everything or we're not, or we can't do that. You know, because that was the biggest problem with the Biden administration was it was just shut up, do your freaking job, which is what we tell you to do, and wait, and we'll tell you everything, right? And
don't ask questions.
Don't ask questions, because we know better than you, right? And that was, and I'm not saying bringing up Biden administration to compare in this type of situation, and I'm not saying that there's any comparison, because there isn't any comparison, right? But it really roadblocks me a lot, and it roadblocks a lot of people, I think, quite frankly, where it's like, bro, like, you're transparent on everything else and you're a pit bull about everything else. Why are you not a pit bull about this? Like, why you can't dismiss it as silly and it's a joke and then throw it into the same narrative as the Russian collusion hoax and all that, which we know were all bullshit. We all know that those were all BS. We know that was already crap. But now what's becoming crap to me is that you're not disclosing this. So it makes it very, it makes you go like this, huh?
Right.
And I understand that. I understand there's a lot of nuance with it. It just, to me, I don't, and I know that the videos of him and the pictures with him partying and all that stuff back in it's probably like what, the late 90s or
probably 90s. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That doesn't really bug me or concern me much, because it's like, oh, they're hanging, because it was the Wild West back then.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And they were in the same circles. They were hanging out in the same circles. And especially back then, Trump was on Oprah. He was on
everywhere.
What was it? Joy Behar, like, she was so nice.
Boxing matches, beauty pageants. He was everywhere.
He was
reality TV. If it was entertainment, he was there. So, I don't, like I said, those pictures in my mind and that video with Epstein, that's not an indictment. Like, my mind doesn't say that
because he was rolling with Michael Jackson. Just as much.
I mean, Michael Jackson. Oh yeah,
and we
exactly.
all know.
Well,
right?
hey,
so
I'm not. Hey, you got to leave Michael alone. That's another conversation.
I'm a big fan.
But here's the interesting thing, though. So for me with Trump, I'm not surprised, because I've always had the belief that he's a narcissist and he is out for himself. And if the agenda or what he needs to be transparent about aligns with what he wants, then it's okay to be transparent. And so this stays in alignment with that. So what he talked about, for example, remember there was a press conference and somebody asked about the Epstein files and Pam Bondi was getting ready to answer the question. And then he stopped. He was taking up for his people. And I respect that as a leader. Take up for your people. And he's like, look, you don't have to answer that. Are you still talking about Epstein, that creep? And then he's like, why are you still talking about that? And so as he's saying that, I'm thinking, but you're the same guy that's still talking about the previous election 4 years later, and you're the president, and you're still concerned about that. You still talk about that hoax, and you still talk about Russia collusion and all of that stuff. And so for you to bring up something that your own administration and your own people within your cabinet is saying the Epstein files need to come out and the Epstein files are going to come out, and then you take over and now you're in power and you have all of the opportunities to release the files. And now all of your folks are lining up to say there's no there. That makes no sense to me. But what it does make sense is that it aligns up with the fact that if it doesn't benefit him directly, it's not a part of his agenda and he's ready to move on. But the difference is that his own base is saying, no, buddy, for the very first time. It's going to be very interesting to see how this all unfolds, because even red hot red meat MAGA is saying, we're not letting this go, buddy. I'm sorry. We're not letting it go. And I love that. I never thought that I would agree with the Marjorie Taylor Greene, but you know what? That for me, I don't care who you are. You may have issues that I agree with or disagree with, but I don't look at you and make one blanket assumption about everything that comes out of your mouth. I take you for what you're worth. If Marjorie Taylor Greene says, hey, you know what? He needs to release those files. I respect her for that. And I love the fact that she's asking him and calling out her colleagues to release the files. I respect that. She's a fighter.
I don't think that this is just my gut. I think the worst of it is that he may have been a passenger on a manifest list, probably. Because he does.
He was would you say that again? He was a passenger.
I think the worst of the situation is that he probably is a passenger on a manifest list.
Okay, gotcha.
And
you're talking about Trump specifically, right?
Yes, Trump specifically. Yes.
Okay.
Because he does go. He said it a few times where he said he found out what he was doing, but they talk a little bit. They have a relationship a little bit in the early 90s or the late 80s or late 90s, early 2000s. But then after that first time that Epstein became whatever, Trump really wasn't associated with him at all, right? I mean, there's not a lot of.
You're talking about in 2009 when he was indicted, 2008, 2009 when he was indicted.
Trump distanced himself from him, because there's not a lot of new stuff of that with him, right? Yeah. I don't think Trump's a pedophile. I don't think Trump did any of that weird stuff. I don't think any of that. I don't
either, but why why they do the 180? That's the part that I don't get. What's your theory about that?
I'm going to tell you. Was he a playboy? Is he a playboy? Yes.
100%.
We know that.
That's indisputable.
Right? I mean, come on.
Stormy Daniels, all of those beauty pageants, grab them in the peas, all of it.
All of it.
Yeah.
He was nasty. He still is. He always was. The guy was from New York, and he grew up in a time frame where that was allowed.
Women were objectified. Yeah,
sure. That was allowed. I mean, that was allowed. It was allowed. It was acceptable, and that was his brand, and that's who he was, right? And by the way, he was given a lot of grace. And he's given a lot of forgiveness, and no one said anything about that.
Even by his own wife, bro. She knew about a lot of that stuff.
Yes. And
shout out to Melania.
and by the way, people only became critical of the way he was with women after he ran for president the first time.
Facts.
Right?
Well, I think, yes. And like, for example, to your point, he was on Howard Stern all the time. Nobody's going to hold that against him but the thing is that as a president, there's a different set of expectations, just like if a person becomes a pastor, there's a different set of expectations. If a person, is working with little kids or working with young females, but in their past, they talked about objectifying women, you're going to look at that a little sideways. Don't you think that's fair?
No, because you're bringing up presidential conduct and you're not even talking about Biden or Obama. Come on.
Okay.
There's so much. Come on. Okay. Let's just leave it. Let's leave it at this then. If we're going to presidential conduct, I get it. Versus nothing that's provable, but we all know now that that's the case, and we can't even hold Biden to his own actions. We'd have to hold his administrators. Guy clearly had dementia for the last year.
I'm not a doctor of that type, and I won't diagnose, but there is clearly some cognitive decline. There's no doubt about that for sure.
Yes, and objectified women, but there's so many.
I agree. And I think that those types of behaviors should be held to account. Like, just because you're a Democrat, like, I'm not even a registered Democrat. I'm independent. So for me, man, it's about the issues. It's not about the party. I don't have any allegiance to any party. I don't have allegiance to the independent party. Just because I'm an independent thinker, that's the reason why I registered that way. So Biden, he's had some objectionable types of behaviors. If you take a look at his record with civil rights and who he's aligned himself with, historically and all of that stuff. And Kamala Harris, even during the debates called him out for what he did with busing and all of those things. And all of those things are objectionable. So I think regardless, if you're the president, you have to be held in high regard. You don't have to be judged for past mistakes from the standpoint of holding that against you. But if there are telltale signs that create the perception that you still may exhibit those behaviors and you use your powers to take advantage of that, that's where the problem is. So, when Trump was on the bus and he was talking about you can grab them by the peas and all that stuff. Okay. If you said that 20 years ago, but you had a major personality shift and you got saved and changed your life and turned it around, cool. Everybody makes mistakes. Ain't none of us perfect. But if there's still a lot of remnants of that type of behavior and it seems like it's crept in, and now because you're the most powerful man in the world, that matters. But I think that his behavior is, for example, I think that he's probably at his best. I've never seen him. I think from a presidential standpoint and how he conducts himself, I think he's probably at his best I've ever seen him at. So okay. I have to give him that credit. He's very polished and he's very changed. He's more polished. I wouldn't say he's very polished, but relative to before, he has definitely, on the presidential continuum, he's definitely become more presidential relative to his first term. I'll give you that. So I think in that, especially in today's medium, having social media and news outlets and transparent, look, if you compared him, and the one thing you could say about Trump, and no one can argue with this, because you could pull up videos of Trump in the 80s and the 90s, he is still the same as far as policy thinking and how he thinks and how things should be done. I'll give you that. Right? Now, having said that, if we're going to objectify or hold to the standard of presidential concept, I'd say one of the biggest aspects of President Trump that you could hold him against is his objectification of women. I give you that. Well, if we're going to compare presidents to presidents, and we only know what we know, put Kennedy in that too, because he objectified women, and it is facts that he had affairs. Yeah, facts, no doubt. Except for, there wasn't social media and worldwide media like it was. No doubt. I'll give you that for sure. So put Kennedy in today's. No doubt. He would be open but I would say the difference is that Kennedy, even though he was a womanizer, most likely, he definitely carried himself with a certain decorum that was fit for the presidency. And so, you know, I think that with Trump, one thing that people respect about him is that he's a fighter. Yes. And for someone who likes a strong man leader, he fits that. And that's what was attractive for many of his base about him. But the problem is that as a strong man but a strong man who's a narcissist, that's where the problems come in, because his agenda is more important than everything else and everybody else. And the moment you cross him and the moment you try to challenge his authority, you will get stepped on and you will get pushed to the side. And as a president, you have to be more of a unifier. Like if you're a CEO of a company and that's the attitude you want to take, it's your company. So if you're working for him, you either take it and shut up or you leave. And so, you know, like I've heard some people comparing running a country to running a company. They're not the same. They're not the same, because as when you run a company, you're the authority. In a highly functioning democracy, the people are the authority and the people are the ones. And that's the thing that's so delicate about a properly functioning democracy, which this is not. And what I mean by that specifically, it is a republic. But even as a republic, it's supposed to be of the people, by the people, and for the people. And the people in Congress, the House and the Senate, what they've shown by and large is that they're of themselves, for themselves, to the detriment even of their constituency, unless that's something that gets them unelected.
Yeah.
I got a problem with that.
I think that Trump is I think that Trump is a recipe for success right now, because I don't think anybody could have done what he's done. I don't think anybody is, number one, America. I don't think anybody, I think for him to have an agenda the way he does, you need that right now. And I also think you need a bully right now. And I think he's been the most unifying president that we've had in a very long time. And now the way
unifying?
Yes.
Okay, please explain that. I totally disagree with that.
Here's why I'm saying this. Here's why I'm saying this. And we might be off topic on this, but I still have to get back to why I think the theory, what the theory is and why he doesn't release it. Because I think the worst case scenario, obviously, he might be a passenger on the manifest list, right? From a while ago, a long time ago. But I think he's a unifying president simply because you are getting stuff done now. You're getting stuff done in the UN. So you're getting stuff done both internationally, and you're getting stuff done domestically. You have immigration policies being enforced again. You have bills being passed on a bipartisan level. And you have the UN increasing their budget, which we haven't seen happen. Now, I think he's the most unifying president that we've had in a long time, simply because he is accomplishing things and getting unification done through force. Whereas if you look at the unifying thing that Reagan accomplished, or a unifying process that Clinton may have had, or more so Reagan, is that unification was done through power.
So when you're talking about unification, what are you referring to? Because like when I think about Reagan, I think about what he did by force is the Berlin Wall, right?
I think that was accomplished through power. I think Reagan had a lot more power, and Trump has a lot more force to him.
Okay, all right.
People are more afraid of him to do it, because here's the reality behind it, right? The people are coming together and are working together and are accomplishing things and are in lockstep more now, because they have to be, because they know they don't have anywhere to go. His coalition is solid. He has a popular vote. He has a congressional majority. He has a Senate majority, right? He has both majorities, and he also has one with a electoral college. So you can't argue the way he won, right? So he has a mandate that carries.
But that's not unifying. You haven't said anything yet that's unifying. He just the Republican Party has taken over the congressional seats, yes, and the Republicans have a majority, but that isn't necessarily. I haven't heard anything yet that you've said that suggests that he's unified. What has he unified?
He unified the country for a popular vote. I mean, if you win a popular vote, that's a sign of unification. That's an early sign of unification, because you can't win a popular vote just by getting one party, right? So you had to create some unification there. And I think the unification was done with transparency, straightforward thinking government, less on the left side of the weird fringe, and getting people to get things done in a way where, look, guys, we all have to get done on the same page. And I think you're seeing that with the UN stuff, where he's got a NATO alliance where he's got these guys to increase their budgets. That's unification. You've got these guys to say, okay, grumbling on, we're finally going to put more money into this. Yes, we've got a fair. That's a massive foreign policy accomplishment.
Okay, but Chris,
that's unification.
He ran on an America First agenda. What you're talking about with the UN, that's the United Nations. That's a foreign policy issue. And I agree that other countries need to pay their fair share as it relates to the amount of money that's being placed for different, ideas and concepts and products and processes to be fulfilled throughout the world. I understand that. I agree with that part. But when we talk about unification, especially for a person that runs on the America First agenda, I haven't heard anything that the Democratic Party and the Republican parties are lockstep on at all. Now, I'm not blaming him specifically for that. I want to be very clear when I say that, because right now where we are as a country, you have the far right and you have the far left, and they're both crazy. There's this silent middle that's being pushed to the fringes, and they're just being pansies and wimps. And I think what needs to happen is there needs to be on center right and center left that come together on specific issues that allows both parties to say, okay, here are 5, 6, 7 items that we can agree on. Like, I believe that in a weird way, on accident, Epstein is a unifying concept because people on the right and people on the left agree with that. However, the files still haven't been released, and that's still a problem.
And here's and getting back to that, here's my point on why I think, and this is where I strongly believe in it. This is just my gut feeling of it.
Okay.
Because I don't think there's anything in there that says he's a pedophile. Because he's just not his character.
I'm not going to jump to judgment. I think there's a possibility that he messed with some underage girls. But if you were to say, gun to my head, am I willing to die on that belief that he's a pedophile? I would be more willing to say that he's not, because he's even said when he was on Howard Stern, hey, he did say, hey, they're on the younger side and stuff like that. But he said, that's not really what I'm into. I'm more into the ones that are, 25 and up. That's kind of my area. And that was way back then before he was married. So I would agree with you. I don't think he's a pedophile either. I am concerned that there is something there though. It's just such a crazy reason why. And when I say something there, like, I think there is some circumstantial information that could be construed or misconstrued as being incriminating. And I think that would be the challenge for him, is that now you have to prove that you're innocent, as opposed to if there's no information there, you're innocent until you're proven guilty. And he's not even, in any, he hasn't even been indicted in the court of public opinion about being a pedophile, because even people on the left, that's not something they're saying. So I would agree with you on that.
Yeah. And there's no circumstantial or substantial evidence there. And here's the thing, because the left side had these files first. The Biden's DOJ knows this too. They would have crucified this guy.
100%.
Crucified the shit out of this guy. So my theory here is that he was going to do it. And he's been very brash about everything else right now. But I think that the people that are on that list are just so far gone and too far up and too ingrained in certain systems of the world, Len, that I just think that he's got those phone calls, and he got those phone calls because, even though he's the president of the United States, there's still those powers that be around that went, we just can't do this.
Because do you agree with, let's say your theory is true. Okay. Do you believe he's justified in that, assuming that your theory is correct?
Okay. Here's why I think that's the case. Because how do I want to say this the right way? It's kind of like one of those situations where if you knew the truth, or if you do this, the whole system will collapse, right?
How though?
Give you an example. Almost like a pure markets, a pure 100% pure free market capitalist system would not have allowed TARP to work, or TARP to happen, right?
Correct.
Troubled Asset Release Program, right? Bail out the banks. It would have been screw it, let them freaking fail.
Car companies would have fallen. Ford, Chrysler,
GM would have been out of business.
GM,
Ford
all
out
of
of business.
Yeah.
But in 2008, we saved banks because why? Because it was too big to fail, right? And if we would have let it fail, it would create so much chaos in the system, right? How we know it, that kind of almost like Ghostbusters, right?
And did you agree with that being done? Did you agree with that part? The bailouts, did you agree with that?
No, I don't. I don't agree with the bailouts.
Okay.
I don't agree with the bailouts. I don't.
Right.
I am a vehemently opposed bailouts, right?
I think the bailout should have happened because of the point you brought up. I think it would have crashed the economy. And I think that there's a reason that we needed to make sure that those companies stayed afloat. And I think the sanctions or the penalty should have been more strict, because, like, for example, with American General that was really AIG that became American General, their CEOs acted in such a disruptively inappropriate behavior, because what happened is, they were giving all these different bonuses and flying all over the place, and they were acting so irresponsibly with the money. In a situation like that, I think that bailout should have been revoked, and they should have been able to be allowed to go under. But then when you think about these car companies and all of the workers that were there, I just think there would have been so much of economic calamity. So here's my question to you. So you disagreed with the bailouts because you feel like, okay, let the markets decide what's going on, allow capitalistic intuition and instincts and all of that stuff to take over, let the chips fall where they may. Where do you stand with these so-called powerful people who may be on those files? Where do you stand?
Right. So I'm in the same accord in that let it out. Okay. Let it out because here's the thing. I'm not an economist. I'm not a banker. But what I do know is that when you had these banks go and we had these financial crises, Chase was fine. There was no problem with Chase Bank. And for the most part, Wells Fargo was okay too. It wasn't until after a few years later we found out the issues with Wells Fargo was opening accounts without people's right. But by and large, Chase Bank was good. So what you would have had happen is you probably would have had all these banks buy these banks that were failing, and they wouldn't have been manipulated, and you would have had a forced reorganization of this crazy ass system that's happening. And again, you saved them, and it's happening again. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are still there, and it's happening again, and these banks are lending money, and it's happening again. These people that are on this list, they're in such massive positions of power that they're so untouchable because they deal in a world that we don't talk about. They don't deal in the world of money anymore. It's all in a world of influence now. Money is nothing to these people. Money is nothing to them.
So you're okay with the files being released and allowing them to be exposed
100%.
Regardless of the calamity?
Yes, because at some point you're going to see big things. You're going to see if we knew who was on that list, dichotomies would change, paradigms would change, companies would change, ways of living and doing business would change in such a dramatic way. Like you said, it's the same argument that you have for the banks. They're too big to fail, and you would have had all these things happen, and these companies would have failed. These people being exposed is the same exact thing.
Okay.
It's going to create the same type of effect.
You think so? I mean, to me, I believe that any no, I don't want to do that. I think any person could be replaced. I think any person could be replaced. If you can replace the president of the United States, if you can replace name any CEO of any large company, not suggesting at all that any of them are on the list.
I agree.
While they may be, they can be replaced.
I agree, but imagine if it was a bunch of companies, and imagine if it was this. Okay, here's a better way to say it. Imagine if 60% of them from all those areas and those sectors are involved. Okay, you get what I'm saying?
Let's play that out.
Like imagine if it was like, for example, imagine if it's 40 to 50% of high influential people in multiple areas of life.
And in what circumstance would they not be able to be replaced? You take all of them, their names are exposed. There's a VP of operations. There's the second in line that had nothing to do with it. There are people. Now, the company may lose a lot of shares, I think definitely the stock market would significantly be impacted. But those companies, if they're good companies, they'd still survive.
That's the same argument, though, you could make, Len, for the banks. If you don't bail these banks out, there are other banks waiting in the wings to buy them and absorb them and repurpose the way the market's being ran.
I was okay with some of the companies going under, like Bear Stearns.
But see, that's the argument. It's an all or nothing. It's a binary. I think it's right because this guy isn't too big, but this guy is right. I mean, there are names on that list I think that are at the highest levels where it would challenge social and economic. It would challenge everything so hardcore that I believe it would be like the Matrix being unplugged. It would just complete failure.
All right, so let's do a brain exercise. Okay, see if you follow me. So let's say, without naming any real person, because the reason why, I don't have any fear of putting anybody's name out there. The thing is I don't like to put something on somebody that's, hypothetical, right? You know what I mean?
Of course.
So let's just say you have this gigantic, let's say there's 20 gigantic companies. I'm talking multi-billion, trillion-dollar companies. Okay. So there's only a couple of trillion-dollar companies right now. So let's say all of the trillion-dollar companies, these hypothetical companies are there. These, the top 20 companies, let's say every single one of them were on the files. What's the calamity? What's the breakout? What's the fallout because of the fact that they're found out to be on the list? What happens?
What's the fallout?
Yeah.
Well, I think the fallout is I think the fallout, we can't even possibly imagine the fallout. We can't possibly imagine the butterfly effect. Like, for example, let me give you an example here.
All right.
Look at just how much fallout and repercussion is happening as a result of the astronomer CEO scandal. You know what I'm talking about, right?
The astronomer CEO, the one where they were caught on
the Kiss Cam, right? Look at how much fallout is happening as a result of that we couldn't even possibly imagine. For example, so what? He was on the Kiss Cam with his HR person. So what? He's a great executive and she's a great executive. So what? They were having an extramarital affair, and you can't even prove that they were having an extramarital affair. They were caught on the Kiss Cam. He was holding her. She was holding her. We're all adults. We know what was happening, but you can't prove that anything was happening. But as a result, he's resigning. She's resigning. The person who booked the tickets got fired, supposedly, right? Look at all these repercussions that are happening. He was obviously a great executive of that company, right? Otherwise, they wouldn't have let him go just because of a possible misconduct, right? Because he was married. Well, I'm not saying what he did was right, but look at all that fallout that's happening as a result of that. Look at all the different stuff that's happening now. Everybody's making fun of it. There's even some tension there with Coldplay, like, hey, you shouldn't have done that, and all of that's there. And now everybody's making all these spoofs and he's making fun of it with the sports teams. That's a lot of no one could possibly predict the memes, everything that's happening in that, the follow-up that's as a result of that, because he was caught on a kiss cam, right?
Okay. I hear what you're saying.
Just think about it for a second here.
Okay.
You're not just talking about CEOs. You're talking about heads of state, religious leaders. There are so many people involved in this Epstein file stuff, and that it would shake core foundations in so many different places, because I don't think anybody would be left out. I think it's rotten across all the boards, because I think that this Epstein thing happened at a time where there were no rules. Rules.
Okay, so let's take the fact that there are probably heads of state, there are probably other kings, or other dignitaries
we know there are some dignitaries because
in other countries,
their royal powers.
Right. Without naming names, Okay, let's take all of that
because they see the list.
Yeah, I believe that, and let's say that there's also church leaders. Okay,
100% there is.
Now let's take the damage of that reality, which is if the files are released, those people would be shamed. But let's compare that to this whole issue right now that we face in our country is a general distrust of the government and of the people who are supposed to represent us. And so when you have such a low approval rating of the Senate and the House and Congress and government, democracy, the whole fabric of democracy only lasts and it only survives because of trust. The very foundation of our dollar, even though because it's a fiat currency, the only reason why it survives is because of trust. If there's no trust, then why would I go vote? And if I don't go vote, then there is a deterioration of democracy itself. And people say, anybody who studies history and anybody who understands democracy understands that it is very, very fragile. And when you're in a situation where the general population does not trust the people they elected to place in power, then the only logical next set of steps is that it could be a revolution. I'm not suggesting that that's going to happen here, but how many revolutions in the past were predicted? Usually it was a rising of tension, and then there was an event that tipped the scale and everything fell apart. And when you look at where our country's going, when you look at you have two political parties that are breaking off into extreme factions. You have a general distrust in the government. You have people that are in power saying one thing and doing another from both parties. And now you have the people who have elected these people to represent us saying, this is what we're demanding as a population, and you're not doing it. Why should we even participate in this political process? So, yes, there would be fallout from these folks being exposed. I would suggest that pales in comparison to the potential fallout based on an erosion of trust.
I think it's the opposite, and I think that he's put in a position where he's got to pick the lesser of the two evils. And I think
the lesser of the two evils is allowing these people to be exposed, because at least it says, look, we said that we were going to release the files.
That's the point. That's the point that I get stuck on, because you operated on that. And that's why my theory makes the most sense to me in my head, where I'm just like, well, it makes sense you ran on this, but then you went, holy shit, this is who's on this list. We can't do this. And I can't help but believe that there are forces and powers that be at a high financial level and a high intellectual level that said there's just no way you can release those. There's just no way you can. And I think that's why we're stuck here with it. But at the same time, I believe that, yes, it needs to be released. But I think that if it does get released, I think that there's so much scandal and so much BS that'll come out of it that people will be more angry if they actually knew. It's kind of almost like, I think it's a situation where it's like, people are going to be angry whether we release them or not, but I think they're going to be even more angry if we do release them. And I think that's where we're at. I think that's where we're stuck at. It's a shitty situation, but I think that's where we're at right now, where it's like, it's going to be, they're going to be more mad if they know the truth than if we don't give them the whole truth. And I think that's why he pandered and broke and motioned for that, like late Sunday, or I think it was, or maybe I think it was late Sunday or Saturday, where he motioned for the public grand jury transcripts to be released, or for Pam Bundy to release them. I think that's the latest thing now, where they're going to release the grand jury transcripts, or they're going to release the grand jury information.
Come on, man, we're not dumb, bro. Like, okay, releasing the grand.
That's going to pacify 80% of people, though. I mean,
I don't think so, bro. I don't think so. I disagree with that. I believe, because everything that I've seen in the media, everything that I've read, everything that I've watched, I have not heard one group of people that says, oh, okay, that's awesome, they're releasing the grand jury information. No. That's a small subset of the real data that's out there, bro. I don't think anybody's buying it. And I think that, okay, so the question I was going to ask you was, let's say you're the president and you know beyond a shadow of a doubt that there's no possible way you could release the files, because, you know, if something is happening and it's terrible and I don't know about it, I live life as though everything's, you know, rose petals and right, green skies, and life is better for me just being ignorant. And you as the president know that, and it's better for me not to know. How would you, if you're in power, how would you handle that fact? How would you communicate to your country?
Man, that's such a tough situation to be in, because I don't know all the details, but I could just assume that let me tell you how I'd handle it if I was operating under the same assumption that I'm operating under.
That's what I'm asking you. Yeah.
I'm operating. Yeah.
This is all hypothetical.
Okay, and again, I'm operating under the fact that I think there are people on this list that if we say this stuff, there's going to be world wars, or there's something to that effect. I think that those people. I think if I'm president of the United States, I'd have to honor the transparency thing, and I would have to put. I think I would have to accomplish it in a way in that say, look, you know, we ran on a campaign of transparency. We said we were going to release these files. And I'd be honest. I mean, I'd have to be honest and say, look, here's the challenge. And here's the challenge with it. You're going to see people, places, events, circumstances, and names that are going to challenge the core foundations of a lot of different beliefs and a lot of different dichotomies and a lot of different things. But I want you to understand that everybody's human, and you know, unless there's hard evidence to accuse these people of this, or unless there's an accuser that comes forward, then that was hurt by this person, right? Then you got to understand these people got to live with that. But here's the list, and here's the accusations, and you know, let the details fall where the details fall, and.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So you would release them. That's interesting.
I wouldn't be able to live with myself otherwise. I mean, because here's the thing: if I didn't,
what I'm saying, Chris, is you. Okay, let me be more clear. I'm saying that you are the president of the United States, and you know what we don't, and you know for a fact that America as a superpower or an economic power would cease to exist. I'm talking the most extreme hypothetical. If this information was found, because it would rock the very core of who we are as a nation, and different nations throughout the world would be rocked, and World War III could happen because revolutions and all of this stuff would happen. Yeah. Let's take the most extreme. Okay. And as a result of that, you knew beyond a shadow of a doubt, there's no possible way that you could release those files. How would you communicate to us as a country that you were not going to release those files?
And I think that's where you get down to the fact that people are so fickle, and that you elected this man because you trusted him to do what you needed to do, or do what he needed to do. And that's where you kind of have faith in all the decision-making process that he's doing, because we don't know all the details. We only know what we know, right? We only know what we're allowed to know, and we only know what we hear. So in that case, I would just be very transparent and honest and say, look, you know what? You elected me because you trust me. You elected me because I ran on this. We're going to be fully transparent, but here, I'm going to be fully transparent with you. Here's the list that we're going to release, but there are certain individuals on here that we can't release for the health of the country and the health of the world. And you just have to trust that process, that they're being dealt with in other ways. They're just being dealt with in other ways. And you've got to trust that process, and you got to make an example out of whoever you can make an example out of. And those people that you can't unmask because they would challenge that. You have to explain that to people in a way where you got to say, look, you got to understand it, and you just got to trust it, but rest assured that they are being dealt with. And then the people that deal with that person, or those people have to be dealt with in a private setting amongst those higher powers that be, because there's things that operate at a level that we're never going to understand, and we can never even try to understand it because we're not in that room, and we're not forced to make those decisions, right? Kind of almost like when Lincoln wanted to pen that letter to his generals during the Civil War, and he wanted to write scathing letters, but he tore them up and he never sent them because he's not there on the battlefield. He's not there on the front line, right? And we're not there as well on the front line of whatever president. It could be Biden, it could be Obama, it could be Clinton. We're not there making all those decisions. You know, we're backseat drivers, right? We're in that regards, right? We're side seat drivers. We're watching the game of chess without actually playing the game of chess. So I think it's a very sensitive subject, but at that point, I would find a way to release as much as I could and be as transparent as I could. Say, look, you're not going to get all the information. And I'm telling you up front, you're not going to get all the information because there's just certain things that we can't do because we just can't do it. And given today's climate, you got to respect Trump in that also too, because given today's world climate, given everything that's happening today in the world climate with Israel and Russia and Ukraine and everything that's happening there, it is an extremely horrible time to throw that into the pot, because you could very well spark something like that with what's on that list, I think.
And see that, so I agree with how you would handle it, because I think as a country, we understand that you have classified, highly classified, and top secret levels of classification. We understand that different people have different levels of security clearance. We also suspect that there's information that's out there that was never released to us because it wasn't time and we weren't ready for it, right? When you look at the Vietnam War, when you look at JFK, when you look at all of these different actual conspiracies, when you look at COINTELPRO,
there's a reason why that was delayed, right?
Exactly. So when you look at, Martin Luther King, when you look at Malcolm X, the government knows what happened, and there's a reason why they didn't release the files. Now, while we may not completely agree with why they didn't release it, we're grown enough to know that there are things that are above our pay grade. And so in this case, when you try to minimize or insult our intelligence, that's what I have an issue with. When you tell me that the files are on your desk and then you tell me that what you said is not what you said, that's what I have an issue with. And when you tell me that we need to move on, and why are we talking about this creep, and we need to move on and talk about something different, or that the Dems did it, you're insulting my intelligence. And when you tell me that we just need to move on, just tell me, look, listen, there are certain things that are on those files that are highly classified. And as we read through them, they're actually top secret, and it would create calamity beyond anything you could possibly imagine. And I know that's not the answer you wanted, but as your president, as your leader, as you know, the person who has access to this information, in good conscience, I could not allow that to be let go, let out. And I understand that there are going to be many of you that are not going to like that decision. And I understand that. And I'm willing and able to deal with the repercussions of that. But in good conscience is just not something I can do. Just tell us that, like, just give us the fact that you're not going to tell us. Just give us that level of the benefit of the doubt to suggest that we're intelligent enough to process that. Now, I wouldn't like that answer, but that's better than insulting my intelligence and just telling me there's no there. Stop it. It's insulting.
I think that's the best answer to give, because then you do also solve the transparency thing, where it's like, look, guys, we want to release this stuff, but the fact is, it's just so ugly, we can't. And it'll just do more harm than it is. But rest assured, we are dealing with those people. Because I think at this point, it almost becomes too much of a gotcha in a show now, where it's like, gotcha, we need to release this. And we've overblown it now to the point where I just think that what's on those lists is so serious that it will create too much more chaos. It's more harm more harm done to release it publicly now than to leave it and let us deal with it on the back end.
Yeah,
I think
I'm inclined to agree with that, and I know we've got to put this issue to bed.
We've been on this for a minute.
We have, but to me, it's not just the files, though. That's the reason why this story is so big. It's so many levels, because when you have an administration where the actual people who are in the position to release the files were the same ones that said we should release them, but now all of a sudden they've completely changed their tune. It reeks to high heaven that there's some cover up, and it looks really bad. It looks really bad. Yes. And it just, it just goes to show that when you're not in a real position of power, where there are real world when there's real world consequences of your actions and the information you share, it really suggests that they really understand that there are real world consequences to that information being released. But the problem is we kind of already believe that already. So just be one of the first. If you're going to be a transformative and you're going to be an administration that's different and transparent, then just tell us, look, you guys, trust us. You don't want to see what's on there. It's terrible. And then what I would do in the background. Yes. And what I would do in the background is I would do everything I could to find somebody to serve as, there's got to be some showing that justice is being sought after, as opposed to being kicked under the carpet. Because where we're left to think as a society, as a country, is that the rich and powerful get away with everything, and they're able to kick things under the rug and make stuff go away. And those that don't have the power and the influence and the representation, we get screwed and we get thrown in jail, and we get, made a public mockery out of, and we don't have any wiggle room, and it's just unfair. And all this does is it just fuels that distrust.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. And I think that you insult everyone's intelligence by doing the whole, oh, it's silly. And that's where I have an issue, where I'm like, it wasn't freaking silly before, dude. And we understand it's a serious conversation. We understand it's a serious thing. But yeah, let's at least say, hey, look, these people are dealing with it. It's ugly. You guys don't need to know about it.
I
think we
absolutely.
cover one more topic, or we could kind of.
Yeah, let's do. I think what we'll probably do is end up cutting this into different segments and things like that. So I think we can put this to bed, but I also think that it's important to come back to this topic as information unfolds, and let's talk about just how we're processing that and sharing our differing perspectives on it, because I think that people need to, my hope is that people get smarter by watching this.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you on that one. So, I mean, at this point, I think the biggest thing is just really just having that transparency and knowing that you're not always going to get what you want, but at the same time, maybe we'll see how the direction with it goes. One thing I can tell you though, when situations like this happen, as you listen to this, going back to it as we wrap up on it, it is just really a distraction. And for me, I remember living through 9/11. I remember living through the dot-com bubble. I remember living through the real estate crisis of 2008. I remember living through COVID, right? I remember living through even the election and all that stuff, and all these different things that have gone on. What I can always come back to is that these either will be distractions for you as a professional, or whether you're working for yourself or whether you're working for someone else or working for someone else in a W-2. At the end of the day, how is this impacting your life? Right? And as a professional, whether you're running a business or you're in or you're working for somebody else, don't get so enamored with this and don't get stuck on this and all those things, because whether Donald Trump was the president or Joe Biden was the president or Barack Obama was the president or George W. Bush Jr. was the president or even Clinton was the president. I think Clinton was still the president when I first started working. It didn't matter who was president. It didn't matter. It did not matter at all. And so far, I mean, obviously this year is not over yet, but I mean, I made a lot of money during a Republican president, and I made a lot of money during a Democratic president. So to me, it doesn't really matter what world issue was going on or political issue was going on or economic crisis was going on. I always found a way to be productive and make money. So I shifted with the economy, and I shifted with the current world of market, and I got better and I stayed ahead of it always. I didn't allow the current circumstances and the current economic circumstances or world market circumstances to dictate my success. And I think that is probably, maybe if I'm sitting here listening to that, that's probably one of the biggest key takeaways I would want you to get out of this conversation is, regardless of anything you talked about today, at the end of the day, the most important thing is, what are you doing to improve your life, both spiritually, family-wise, and business and financially? What are you doing to do those things right now and not getting distracted with this and allowing this to be something that it prevents you from being productive, right?
Yeah, I agree with that. And the way I put it is that there's broadly two different types of people. You're either a victim or you're an agent. And when I talk about agent, I'm talking about agency and being able to have control over the decisions you make and the effort you put in and the strategies that you decide to execute so that life can become better. Having said that, I do believe that while you say it's a distraction, I would say for those families and those victims that completely changed their life. For us that weren't victimized, you're absolutely right. It is a distraction. And I think that we have to be careful in how we talk about it, because there is nuance, because I think that we have to operate with a certain level of empathy for the victims, because there are definitely victims, because, you know, even regardless of what you believe about Epstein being killed or killing himself, he was a victim on a certain level. But what he did to all of those young girls and creating an enterprise that allowed other people to sexually harm other girls, all of those families and all of their husbands and all of their parents and all of their relatives, they're forever going to be changed. And so we have to be empathetic to that. Now, having said that, it's also important for us to understand, to your point, Chris, that regardless of a Republican being a president, a Democrat being a president, has no bearing on success whatsoever. And if you think that the government is going to take care of you, if you think that a certain president is going to make your life better, then you're acting from a victim mindset. Now, there are situations where presidents do things that do victimize and harm people. When you talk about our history here as African Americans in from 1619 even up to present day, but specifically during the Reconstruction era and also during the Civil Rights era, there were specific actions and laws that targeted us as a people to stop our progression. And in those situations, yes, we were victimized. But even though that's the truth, we have a responsibility as individuals in general and as African Americans, and I speak from the perspective of African American male in particular. I have a responsibility to not allow the laws of the land and the leaders of our government to determine the level of success I have. Screw that. They don't control me. They don't have any dictation over, they don't have any say over how much success I have or not. They don't have any bearing on that. And I say that with a complete understanding. And I know my history. I study our history. And so we've got to be able to see both sets of realities. When you have a government that talks about taking away books that talks about slavery, no, you'll never hear them talking about taking away books that talked about the Holocaust. And I'm not going to be one that conflates the two or tries to do any comparison. You don't want to negate any history, but you also don't want to allow a history that's real, that had a real impact on our people and on your people, depending upon what group you come from. You don't want to forget about that, but you also don't want to use that as a crutch that stops you from achieving anything that you set out to do. And that's a weird, almost, it's almost like two different personas that I have to take on, because on the one hand, I see a lot of people who completely say, let's not even talk about slavery. Let's not even talk about history. Let's not talk about any of that stuff because it has nothing to do with where we are right now. No, that's not true, because it all bears itself out. But at the same time, that does not limit the success that I can have or that other people can have to that regard. So.
No, and I think a lot of people get caught up with that too, though, because that's the whole, everyone's looking, a lot of people are looking for an answer right now, and they're looking for a way where they don't have to have the pressure or put the blame on them, right? Oh, there's something for me to blame or somehow to look at it. And that's really the thing that's, a lot of people, oh, what's separating you or what's made you. I never, ever allowed, and I still to this day, I don't allow outside circumstances to dictate how I feel about my success or about my abilities to complete success or to move forward. And I think that's key right there. Is a lot of people can get stuck with that, Len, where they think, oh my gosh, because of this is happening, and because of this and this and this. And I've never allowed that mindset or that way of thinking where an outside circumstance or an outside person or an outcome situation is going to determine my abilities and what I can do for myself or how I can move forward. So I think that's key there. And I think just in that subject there's a lot of people that will get stuck on that and will keep with that subject just simply because they're looking for some type of scapegoat for their own.
I think we need to have further conversations, because that is a very nuanced conversation. And I think just glossing it over. We're not doing it the level of justice that it needs. And I agree with you in some regards as it relates to self-determination. I disagree with you with regards to the fact that there have been laws and policies and procedures that have been in place that have systematically been put in place to keep certain groups held back. That is a fact. And so I definitely think we should revisit this conversation, because I think we'll have a rich debate about it, because we really need to be able to sparse that out.
I do too. And I think that you're seeing that debate come alive today in a modern day debate today. And I don't think the debate isn't a race debate now at this point. I mean, race is still in there, right? But you see that with the DEI stuff. Now with DEI and the proliferation of diversity, equity, inclusion, where we're not just making it about race anymore. Now we're making it about all different types of things. And we put these policies in place now to counteract shortcomings. And in reality, we're doing more harm than we are by putting these types of policies in by not, right? Because we're allowing people. But on the flip side of that, yes, I do agree with you. There were certain policies and there were certain things that were historically in place that prevented certain groups of individuals from having the same level playing field, so to speak. And that's a conversation we can have that on it, because if we'll probably go another hour or 2 hours if we start talking about affirmative action, DEI, segregation, freedom, civil rights movement,
gender, LGBTQ, yes,
all of that.
Those are all long conversations that we need to make sure that if we do touch on them, that we give it the amount of time to allow the complexity and nuance to breathe. And so, right. We shall come back to that on another day.
Yes,
for sure.
I think just as an exit here, a topic that we could kind of wrap up with today, just talk about something a little bit less heavy, and we could talk a little bit more about summer and family and what that really means. Because it is summertime right now, and that's a good way to leave off of that. What summertime means to you, and how summer's been for you historically in your family, and now what that means for you moving forward, and how to maximize really summer, and not just make summer just this time of the year where the weather's nice for most people and we just kind of cut loose, but really being intentional about what summer is for you and your family and what that means. And you can start on that, or I can start on that. It's just whatever, if you want to go into it, what that means for you. What does summer look like for Len and Tasha Cooper nowadays versus what summer might have looked like when you had kids in the house, or how that all comes down to your work, if you're intentional about summer and your family now.
Yeah, it's interesting because having been an employee as an educator, having transitioned to become an entrepreneur, summers were very different. And the other transition was going from raising little kids to now having a 25 and a 28-year-old, soon to be 26-year-old and 28-year-old. It's evolved and it's changed. I know that sounds crazy. And so I would say when I was in the educational space, we had, a month off at a time, 6 weeks, sometimes 8 weeks off at a time, depending upon how the school year was set up. And so what we would do is we would take vacations every summer. So, we've been to
as a whole family, right?
Yes, as a family.
So you guys
absolutely.
made a tradition to do that. You guys made it a culture or family tradition to do those things.
Absolutely. Even if it was someplace close like Coronado, which is a nice beach area near San Diego, or Disney World. One year what we did is we saved up some money, and we went to Disney World and we stayed, and we went to all 4 of the places. And then after that, we took a cruise. And so instead of getting on the Disney cruise, which was around $8,000 at the time. We took a Royal Caribbean cruise and we got a chance to go to a private island. And so we spent a good 14 days away from the house, just as a family, spending time with each other, reconnecting. And the way that I am with my boys is I've always been very intentional about teaching them that they're going to be a leader, and then posing different questions to them and making sure that they understand world events and what's going on locally, and reading books about their culture and knowing who they are, and also having an understanding of who they are spiritually. So I really wanted to impact them from a standpoint of seeing other cultures. I wanted to impact them as it related to their own culture. I wanted to impact them as it related to who they are as boys being groomed to be men, and individuals groomed to being leaders, right? And then once I became an entrepreneur, summer really wasn't a thing because we were blessed to have different trips that we were a part of. So we took the kids, to different countries. We've taken them to Mexico. We've taken them to Rome, and we've taken them to Venice, and we've taken them to Greece, and we've taken them to, I don't want to name all the countries, but they're well traveled. And being in a business that allowed them to see the world, it really became part of a tradition. And now, on their own, they travel internationally. And so that became a thing. So, I really am interested to hear from you, because you're a parent of younger kids and you have lots of them. And so I'm really interested to hear how you take a look at summer and what does that mean for you?
Well, I'll tell you, one of the biggest things that I got in watching you with your kids was, and I do this now with my older kids, obviously if they got to be 10 or older, is that when kids go on vacation now, and if you're a child and you're 10 or older, you got to do a report on wherever we're going. And I remember watching you do that with your kids. Mm-hmm. And I was like, you got to run your report. So my kids do reports on wherever we go. And my oldest son has a friend. Isn't it? It's such it. First and foremost, the fact that if you have an opportunity to take your kids traveling around the world, I would encourage you to budget other areas in your life to do it. And here's the thing. My dad died when I was 12. He was 45. And he was very well off when I was a kid. We were making a multi-six-figure income. It was close to $250,000 a year back in the late 80s, early 90s.
That's
so we
big.
Experienced a very nice life. But of course, when he passed, we had nothing. Now, I don't remember for the most part, I don't really remember any of the materialistic things that I got as a child throughout my childhood up until 12. And that would include Christmas and all those things. And I have a very good memory. I can remember childhood events going back to when I was in kindergarten, right? I mean, that's like 4 or 5 years old, right? Mm-hmm. But I don't remember those materialistic things, but I remember all the trips that I went on with my family when I was an adolescent. All the vacations, the trips we went to. I remember all of those things very vividly, right? So that's number one, the reason why you ought to prioritize. And maybe that's you not having as many things in your life for yourself selfishly. I remember going out in the field one time and meeting with a very high net worth client.
And when you say going out in the field, explain what you mean by that so people understand. What I mean by that is
going out and meeting, I know, right? Going out and sitting with a client across their office or their kitchen table to talk about their financial services with them. And I remember my wife was with me at the time when we were doing appointments like that with clients. And I remember he was talking to us about children and vacation and stuff. He said, now remember, when you go on vacation with your kids, that vacation is about them. It's not about you and your wife. But when you go on a vacation with just you and your wife, that's when vacation becomes about you and your wife. And I was like, holy moly. So that's a great way to manage, right? That's a great way to manage vacation so that you as parents don't get upset when you go with your kids, because you're going to get upset because kids want everything all the time, 20 hours a day, 7 days. Oh my God, what are we just going to be about? It's not about you and your wife when you go on vacation when you have kids, right? It's about those kids, right? So number one is just getting a chance to spend quality time with the kids. But number two, it's allowing your children to be cultured. And when I say being cultured, you can get your kids a lot of culture just by traveling around the United States and getting them different culture, because culturally in the United States, it's so different state by state. But what I mean by that is allowing your children to see just how good they have it in America versus other parts of the world. And by the way, I've been to very nice places in the world with my kids. But when my kids come back to America, they know there's a different feeling when you come back to the United States versus all the other places they've been in the world. So getting a chance to do that is just key, I think. It's builds so much with your kids and your family. But making them do reports allows them to respect and know the place they're going to, but allows them to educate themselves and become more disciplined.
And when you talk about the reports, it's really important to highlight, do the report before they go so they have a greater level of appreciation. So when they go, they're like, oh, I saw that building when I was doing my report. Oh my gosh, like it has a different level of significance, especially if you go to historical places that have different buildings and things that you can look up and all of that. So I wanted to point that out. Such an important point. I'm glad you brought that up.
Huge.
Yeah.
So the rule for us was always, if they can't wipe their own booty, right, or carry their own luggage, they don't go to vacation yet. They don't get to travel on an airplane yet. So that was the rule to manage it, because I don't want to change diapers on an airplane. No one does. You're bravo to those parents. You don't look like a hero to me in my eyes, doing diapers on an airplane and crying children on airplanes and all that stuff. If they can't carry their own luggage and wipe their own butt, they can't travel on an airplane yet. And I'll tell you right now, my kids, when people see my kids on an airplane in an airport, they're like, how did you get them to behave so well? That's why.
Mm-hmm.
Because
that makes
they have
sense.
to earn that, right? They have to earn that, right? So that was the number one with my kids. And number two, it was just always making time to travel with them, because I knew what an impact it had on me as a kid. So my kids got to travel everywhere, and they still get to travel. But what changed it up for me for summer was I firmly believe parents having a lot of kids, having kids in general, I firmly believe that parents need a summer vacation. They need at least a month, at the very least 2 weeks to themselves once a year during summertime. Because a lot of times what happens is parents become parents, and that's all they do. It's just parents their kids. And then mom and dad don't have a connection and aren't growing with themselves. So for me, I believe that parents should find a way to send their kids to summer camp, send them to grandparents, send them away. So every summer, my wife and I have a month alone where we don't have any kids. And that allows for deep reconnection of ourselves as a relationship, as a couple. But it also allows my kids to go be independent and to go experience life and be away from mom and dad for an extended, for more than 30 days. And we have one of the tightest, most sickest family structures and dynamics you've ever seen. We can explain that later on in a conversation, how we do it differently, because we're a team. My kids love me. My kids miss me, but they're not, oh my God.
Mm-hmm. And they get a chance to bond with their grandparents. And I think, for me, especially in the field that I'm in, I think there's a place when grandma and grandpa get to a place when they are no longer able to have a level of independence, that our responsibility is to still give them memories. And one way to do that is having a caregiver come along on vacation with you. So if mom can't walk up the steps, the caregiver can take her or dad on a different route where there's wheelchair accessibility, and really being able to give them the dignity while still allowing you as the child, in this case, the adult child, to be able to have a lifestyle where, the kids can still see their grandparents but having an extra set of hands to come along on vacation. And the only way you can really do that is to make enough money to be able to afford yourself that type of a lifestyle. Because what I find is that a lot of times what happens is the working professional starts making money, and then maybe they didn't plan properly, and now mom or dad gets sick, and now their life is on hold because they can no longer travel because nobody's helping to take care of their mom or dad. And so having somebody to come in and provide that service, I'm telling you, makes such a big difference. And so, I just really...
That's a huge point. And you know why it's a huge point? Because
Tell me.
when I took my mom to Greece, my mom has physical limitations. I wish I would have had a physical therapist or something to that effect with me when I vacationed with her, because my quality of my relationship with her on that vacation would have been like this, and her quality of time on that vacation would have been like this, simply because now that's designated to an area or a person who wants to deal with that, or not to say that doesn't sound mean, but it's capable of dealing with that and is there for that specific reason. And I can only say that just simply because I know, because when I started bringing my nanny along on vacations with us, because we bring our nanny everywhere. We've had a live-in nanny since 2016. And I remember when I first hired that nanny, I remember some people would give me, oh my God, you're a child and you're not spending that time with your kid. And what I realized is that my relationship with all my kids, even my youngest, my children, because I hired my nanny when I had my last boy back in 2016, and he's 8 now, right? The relationship and the quality of time with him was so much higher. And with all my other kids, because I wasn't doing I was doing the time spent with my children. It was
the quality time.
Yes. And my nanny has a college degree. I don't. She understands how to do that math and all that stuff way better than the core, Common Core, all that stuff. But what I noticed it really was when I started bringing my nanny on vacation, the quality of time went up. The quality of everything went up. Everything increased so much more. Mom and dad can go to dinner on their own without planning it. It was so much more cleaner and just so much more peaceful. And I got a lot of crap from a lot of people about that when I first hired. But here's the best part, is that I'm not hiring a nanny because it's taking away from me. If anything, I'm hiring a nanny. It enhances the time now that I spend with my child. It enhances the time with my spouse. I'm buying actually more time now. I'm actually buying more time. So bringing my nanny with a vacation, I can see how bringing a caretaker, if you have aging parents, that number one unlocks the door for you to be able to take your parents on vacation. But also, number two, it creates an enjoyable environment. Because we've all seen people on vacation with kids and they're miserable, or we've seen people on vacation with older parents and they're miserable. And that goes back down to you being a high value man and going out there and saying, look, yeah, but Chris, Len, that's nice, supposed to be nice for you guys. Look, we were all in positions where we were in a position at one point where we were men, where we would look at successful men or look at men that had things that we done, and we go, lucky, must be nice for them. But then you have that paradigm shift. You understand that you want to be a high value man. You say, instead of saying lucky for them, or whatever, you say, wait a minute, if he could do it, how can I do it? Because now all of a sudden questions like that open your mind to possibilities rather than statements of victimhood close you down to solutions, right? How can I? And the reality is that if you don't have a side hustle, go get a side hustle. Look, if you are not making the kind of money to have the things in your life to make them better, go find a side hustle. And if you are an entrepreneur already, go work 14 hours a day if you're not working 14 hours a day. There's this guy I follow now, Len, and he said, if you're not making $100,000 a month, you're lazy. And I'm like, oh my God. Obviously that's a different level, right? If you're like, Chris, what the hell are you talking about? You're insane, right? For some people, $50,000 a month might be your enough, right? That might be your number. But if you're a high performance person, or you're a performance person, and you got to sit back and go, well, I'm wanting. Look, it's true. If you're not making $100,000 a month at a high functioning entrepreneur level, that's right for certain people in that level. But if you're the type of person here and you're complaining about time off or vacation, or I can't do that, probably means you're not working hard enough. And that's the baseline. If you're an entrepreneur and you don't have $100,000 saved, you better be working 14 hours a day, 7 days.
Absolutely.
Because that's what I did for 10 years straight. 14 hours a day, 7 days a week for 10 years straight. You better freaking do it. You better do it. Otherwise, you don't complain. You've lost your right to complain about anything at that point. Anything.
That's right. That's the thing, because when you're broke as an entrepreneur, there's a different level of being broke, right? Because when you're an employee and you're broke, you just have to wait until the next until the next paycheck comes, because you know it's coming. When you're broke as an entrepreneur, like, you can have bills due and they're not going to get paid on the 1st or the 15th just because if you're not putting in the time and the effort and you're not executing the strategy the right way. Because I believe that there are a lot of people who work hard, but sometimes they work in the wrong way and they don't do the right things and they don't execute the right strategy. And when you don't execute the right strategy, you're not going to get the right results. And that's why I don't care if you're an entrepreneur and you have a desire to have $100,000 in the bank or to make $100,000 a month. You have to understand that you have to put yourself in a position to be around people who know what you don't know, who will push you beyond what you believe is possible and give them the authority to push your buttons and be okay with that. Humble yourself, because a lot of times people are broke and they also have ego. And I read a book once called Ego is the Enemy. And every single time that that a person allows their ego to stop them from becoming successful, that's another entrepreneur who's going to be broke. Because the word entrepreneur is very sexy sounding. And the reality of entrepreneurship is it's hard. It is very difficult. And when you first start, there are people who ridicule you, who say you're crazy. And then after that, they violently oppose you because now you start to show success. And then at some point in time, when you're successful, it becomes self-evident. But most people don't get to that place. Most people don't get to experience that. And going back to your point, Chris, your wealth is really connected to what you define as freedom. Because for one person, freedom is, you know what? I can go where I want, when I want, and I can stay as long as I want there. And I don't attach a dollar figure to that. And for another person, it's, you know what? It's always going to be that next goal. And that's what keeps people moving. And so, it's different for everybody. So, your point, and what I want to wrap up my comments in saying that one thing that I've known about you is that you've always put yourself in a position to be around people so you can continue to be a lifelong learner about how to become successful and how you can take that information and execute and apply. And that's what works. And most people, they don't have the staying power to execute. And that's really the difference.
Yeah. And it's having that discipline, right? Like for me, watching how disciplined you were with a lot of areas of your life, finance, all that stuff, and just watching that discipline go, okay, you got to be disciplined. This is how you have that discipline. And no matter what, you're like, but then you see the reward. Discipline starts to become easy once you see the rewards of discipline. The compounding effects of discipline start to become very easy when you start to see the compounding effects of the rewards that get produced as a result of it. So, but I
agree.
Love it, man. It's a good conversation for today. And I think we can end on that note with what we've got. I mean, look, at this point, if you've tuned in, if you've heard this conversation, you like it, we'll have a lot more conversations like this as well. You could check out some of our other content and some of our other series that we have. The goal for us always at this is to always understand that we're never above anybody. We're never below anybody. We're always beside everybody. We're always next to that. And we're just here to share, what's worked for us and what our opinions are and how we're operating in the world today as men that have wives, have children, and have businesses, multiple businesses, have retired from other businesses, sold businesses. I mean, you name it, we have it on here from both mine and Len's experience. So we appreciate the time to listen to this conversation. And we're looking forward to you staying tuned for additional conversations and additional guests as we bring you on here. So with that being said, Len, appreciate your time. I know you're going to have a killer week this week. It's the beginning of the week. I plan on having a killer week. And we'll see you guys on the next one.
Yep. And all I would say in wrapping up is if you liked what you heard, share it with somebody. And maybe if you disagreed with something I said or disagreed with something that Chris said or vice versa, you agreed. We'd also like to hear from you. One thing that we really want to do as we grow is if you continue to engage with us, we're going to continue to bring content and information. And our number one goal is to bring value to you. And so any way that we can do that, we want to do that. So make sure you like, make sure you comment, make sure you share. And as Chris said, with that, till next time, take care.
Conversation has given you clarity on your next steps. Please share this episode with someone who's walking the same path. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss future episodes. And remember, planning ahead isn't just prudent, it's an act of care. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on The Family Office.